Bonjour everyone, in previous video I showed you how I made this strapless top and there are some issues with it. As you can see, there are wrinkles going on across the top and that is something that just bothered me. I have made this pattern before using I made this style before using my body's pattern and I did not have that issue going on, so I wanted to figure out what happened, what did I have to do differently. But another problem was my zipper. The installation was really bad and I will be showing you what I did to fix that. So for my top, for the front of my top, I brought out my old pattern that I created from the bodice, which had no issues, no lines going on across my top. And you can see the distance from my circle, from my bust depth, pretty much. It's different. It's much shorter on my bodice pattern than it is on my torso pattern. And the reason why was because I had lowered my bust point since I made my bodice pattern. So my torso pattern is made with my bust point lowered from when I adjusted my pattern to lower the bust point. So that's what I have for my torso pattern, and that is why I have a distance, much more distance going on from the circle to the edge of my garment here. And I have a hollow chest, so I don't need that much of a distance. I feel like that's what caused the issue. For somebody who has a full bust and has more meat on top, maybe they won't have that issue. But for me, that was a problem. I'm assuming that's what was causing it. So what I did was ended up lowering my design from the cross front, which is where I had gone up a quarter of an inch, and then I just went down to the original cross front point. Initially, as you see here, I had thought about lowering my armhole by a quarter of an inch just to shorten the distance from the circle to the edge, but I just figure that's just too radical of a difference. The curve is just way too different, so I ended up just leaving my armhole, my underarm as it is, and just adjusted the curve from there, and I got a shorter distance, slightly more than my bodice pattern, as you see, but it's shorter than the original. But another issue I had is how the waist look, from the waist to the hip. I didn't like the way it looks, and I realized it's because I made my line more subtle from the waist to the hip versus actually coming out from the waist. That's really the correct way to create that pattern. The pattern is inspired by the Dior bar jacket. So that's what I was trying to do, but just a more subtle version of it. But still, I would have to really come out from the waist to create that effect. And I did not do that. I made my lines more subtle. So that's a change I had to make. So I'll show you what that looks like at the end with the adjustments I made. So to fix the front of my top, what I did was cut out three ovals of different sizes, and then I cut them out on my fabric, and they look like this. And I went ahead and sewed them, and I trimmed a lot of it off. As you can see, I didn't get to film me trimming them, but that's what it looks like after I did trim my seam allowances. And so I flip it inside out. I was holding my camera with one hand, so that's why it's looking like this. I'm just doing everything with one hand, but if I can do it with one hand, you already know it's not that hard to do. So it worked out with me doing it with one hand. So I flip it inside out, and this is what everything looks like after flipping it. And then I just use a ladder stitch to close it off, and then I iron all of the pieces. So I have three different sizes of oval going on. I wish I did choose a different pattern, maybe some flowers, but I feel like for the color of the top, maybe this design was more suited. The lines were more suited for the color, so I just went with the ovals. So this is me trying to figure out the placement here. I only had three large ones that I was placing across my garment here, but I guess from this point you pretty much get what I'm trying to do. It's me using these motifs to hide the wrinkles that are happening on the front of my garment here at the top. So that's what I use these motifs for. That's how I ended up fixing my top, so I don't see the wrinkles. And that was the only way for me, because I was not going to take this apart and then retrace my pattern piece on the fabric. That would have been way too much work, especially being that this has a lining and I had the zipper on. that was not going to happen. So the best thing was to just figure out a way to hide the wrinkles going on, and this was my solution. That's the solution I came up with. Just trying to place them around just to figure out something that looks nice. One thing I learned is when you're doing motifs like these, you don't want to sew them too tight, because I did sew them too tight. You want to sew them like you would sew buttons on, almost. Because I sewed them too tight, I feel like the finished product didn't look the way that I wanted it to look. It just looked too stick together. I wanted it to look, I don't know, more classy. But that's not what I ended up getting, because I did end up sewing them way too tight with each other, or to my fabric. And even when I did have to sew them with each other as well to keep them on. And I did have to put the motifs first at the top, and then put the garment on, and then pin my motifs to where I could get the wrinkles to be hidden. So it was important for me to put it on before I finish it off, so that I could make sure my wrinkles were hiding where it need to be hidden, where they need to be hidden. So that's something, if you do have any issues like that with the garment you're making, putting your garment on will help you figure out how where you need to place your motifs in order to hide what you're trying to hide. So yeah, so you can see here I'm just connecting them together before I tried on the garment, and then I ended up deciding where to place them, where to finish off the sewing at the end. So it took a lot of trial and error. It took a lot of testing to figure out how do I place this, where do I want to place it to make it look decent. Honestly, at one point it felt like the less I had, the better it looked. But then, I don't know, I just ended up putting much more on there. So this is the finished look. This is what it looks like when it's finished. This is the amount that I ended up hiding in wrinkles. It's about maybe 3/8 of an inch total when you pinch it. So now it's time to move on to the zipper to fix my zipper. And the issue that was going on there was just me having placed it wrong. So before I show you what I do, I just want to show you the difference between one that I already adjusted, one side that I adjusted, and the other side that I have not adjusted at all. You can see the difference here. And you can see the zipper tape on one, and the other one you cannot see the zipper tape, only the teeth of the zipper. So the goal is to actually make sure all of the zipper tape is hidden, and that's what's going to give you the cleanest zipper installation. So what I did was use my needle and thread, and I just went in and out, just creating stitches. I went through the groove of the zipper, and then I come out almost at the same point that I went in at, and then I just pick up a stitch on my zipper right where my zipper is already sewn, and then I go back into the groove and then come out almost at that same point that I went in, and then continue picking up stitches and doing the same thing constantly. That's how I ended up fixing it. What that did was just bringing my fabric closer to the zipper teeth. That's really how that solved it for me. So that's what I did to fix my invisible zipper installation that had the issue. And I did install it by hand initially, so it only makes sense for me to fix it by hand. If I did do it on a sewing machine, I feel like this is what I would end up doing unless I removed it and reinstall it. This is the most convenient way for me to have done this, honestly. Even if I did it on a machine, this is the same thing that I would have ended up doing to fix it. But it's not often that you find issues with zippers like that. But for me, the top is something that I plan on wearing because I spent time making it. So I just wanted my zipper to look fine in the back. So that's why I took the time to actually fix my zipper. This is what it looks like. You can barely see the stitches that I picked up on, barely. That's what it looks like where I was going through with my needle. And this is how everything looks. It's close to the zipper teeth, and this is when it's closed. You can see the before and after. You don't see any space anymore. So I went ahead and cut out the pattern pieces that I just did, where I made the distance shorter between the circle and the edge. Those are my pieces cut out. That's the result. And you can see there's still wrinkle going on at the top. It's not as much. It may be harder for you to see because I have pattern on my fabric, but it is much better. And where you see that wrinkle, that's exactly where my bra edge is at. So I did have the wrong bra on. That didn't help, but even when I took it off, there's still some subtle line going on. But this is it for this pattern.